United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good, let's do roll call. Mayor Sellers, are you on the line? Is he on? Okay. Albert Yant?
Present.
David Harwood?
Here.
Melissa Pickett?
Here.
Pete?
Here.
Okay. Okay, approval of minutes from the last meeting. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Closed session minutes. Do I hear a motion?
I did have one correction to those,
Okay.
and I've already shared them with Hillary. Do I need to do anything other than that?
No.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Consent.
With
Go ahead.
modifications.
With modifications.
Okay, consent agenda. Do I have anything on the consent agenda?
Move to approve.
I would like to make two changes, please.
Okay.
I would like to have the water line recap removed and the closed session removed, please.
Okay. Would you like to amend your motion? Alan?
Yes, to include that.
Okay. Have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Albert? David?
Yes.
Melissa?
Aye.
Pete?
Yes.
Okay. Miss Hillary, do we have any public comment tonight? Okay, anybody else? Okay. All right, moving right along. Okay, presentation. Tonight we have Mr. Clay McCrary here to do a presentation about the John Muir Scenic Byway. If you would, speak up to the mic, or step up to the microphone and introduce yourself.
Well, I'm happy to do that, and thank you, Doug, for that introduction, and look forward to being here with all of you tonight. I live down in Lenoir. My name is Clay McCrary, but I escape up here to Blowing Rock every chance I get because, for one thing, it's a whole lot cooler up here. But all that being said, I want to get into tonight, and I want to start off by providing a quote, and it's a very famous quote by a pretty famous man. And that quote is this: "The mountains are calling, and I must go." That quote is by John Muir, who is considered the father of the national parks. And you could almost say that quote's probably synonymous with Blowing Rock because you would hear it up here so much that it is almost one and the same with this being such a magnificent mountain town. Amen. But thank you so much. But one of the things that I really want to emphasize tonight is another quote by that same man. And that quote is one that is not so well known. And that quote reads, "The drive from Roan Mountain to Lenoir is, I think, the finest in America of its kind." Same man made that quote, and he made that quote whenever he was actually traveling through here in Blowing Rock in 1898. And on that trip, it was basically it was a botany trip to explore the eastern forest and a lot of the eastern plant life that we have here, and we're so blessed to have here in our mountains. But what I really want to get into tonight is an opportunity that quote presents us, and it would present the town of Blowing Rock. And you as the council members have before you a copy of this sheet right here, and it is sort of a fact sheet that I'm going to be going over really quickly with y'all tonight. So I want to start off by saying the state of North Carolina currently has 62 scenic byways officially designated that allow motorists to experience a bit of the state's history, geography, and the breathtaking scenery while raising awareness for the protection and preservation of these treasures. Now, I'll also say the state does a lot to promote this program. This is a copy of the North Carolina State Scenic Byways Guidebook. So this is something that the state really utilizes for tourism promotion in those local communities that a state scenic byway will go through. But I want to make it clear, the North Carolina Scenic Byways, they are chosen by NCDOT, and they are ultimately approved by the North Carolina Board of Transportation. But tonight is an important first step in that process, because one of the things on my next point here that NCDOT looks at is local resolutions of support in favor of that state scenic byway designation. And that's exactly the reason that I stand here before all of you tonight to present this idea to you as the Town Council of Blowing Rock. A couple other points I want to make real quick is North Carolina scenic byways cost local towns and counties absolutely nothing. They are already funded and maintained by NCDOT just as they are today. So that does not need to be a concern of the council. Another thing that I've had a couple of questions about, and I want to clarify this as well. North Carolina scenic byway designations do not change any current roadway names or local designations that may apply to that roadway. So just to emphasize that point, if y'all were to come up and decide to present before the state an idea to honor a local individual, this would not prohibit y'all from doing that at all. You can still pursue that, and it doesn't change anything that is currently already in place as far as that's concerned. A state scenic byway name is really more of a nickname to try to, again, promote that tourism going through that stretch of scenic byway, and it applies specifically to the byway itself. The other key point that I want to make real quick is that with this quote, what I think it does is it presents an opportunity to use that stretch of road that John Muir traveled exactly and encourage others who are tourists to follow along with that route. This current scenic byway proposal would utilize US 321 and US 221 here in Blowing Rock, and it would be called the John Muir Parkway in honor of his historic travel, and as I mentioned before, it was part of an important botany tour of eastern forest and plant life. But here's where I get into the meat of what I'm wanting to talk to y'all about tonight. So, two things that I think this could really do for Blowing Rock is this. The first one is the proposed John Muir Parkway could help to promote important existing recreational assets. And Blowing Rock, you guys are full of them. And that's a credit to you guys here on the Town Council and the important work that y'all have done. But just to highlight a couple of those, this scenic parkway would actually go by the trailhead for the Middle Fork Greenway, right there where US 321 and US 221 meet. So that's an important area you could highlight as part of this scenic parkway. Another area is, of course, you have several parks here in Blowing Rock that you could utilize as well, including the Blowing Rock Park, the Broyhill Park, that is going to be located directly adjacent to it on US 221. And of course, there's Moses Cone Memorial Park, which we're already familiar with as part of the Blue Ridge Parkway, and would also be part of this corridor with Bass Lake. But here's possibly the most important point I want to make tonight. The proposed John Muir Parkway would allow us to use Muir's travel through the region to highlight local history. And you guys here in Blowing Rock, you have a rich and beautiful history associated with your town. And just a couple of examples of some of that rich history is the Lenoir-Blowing Rock Turnpike that Muir himself traveled that was an early version of US 321. So what you're looking at there is the Lenoir-Blowing Rock Turnpike. What a lot of people do not realize about it is it was established all the way back in the late 1800s. And even back then, it was considered the best route into and out of the Blue Ridge Mountains for its time. And there are articles in the Charlotte Observer all the way back in the late 1800s that attest to that fact. And so I think that's something we could definitely highlight with this scenic byway. The historic Blowing Rock hotels, like the Watauga Hotel that used to stand here in town and the Green Park Hotel that is still standing today, one of those hotels, and this might be a good history project for somebody here, one of those hotels John Muir stayed in. Now, I will be honest with you, I've dug as far as I can on that one, and I have not been able to determine which one it was. But he definitely stayed at one of those two hotels because he specifically references it in his journal. And the last point I want to make is the historic Yanalossie Road. And that's, of course, what 221 is today. Muir also traveled along that, and it was an important connection between Linville and Blowing Rock. As a matter of fact, there was the Linville Improvement Company at the time, and they kind of wanted to get a piece of the pie of what was going on here in Blowing Rock, quite frankly, because Linville wasn't even really a tourist town at that time. It was just getting ready to become one, so they wanted that connection to Blowing Rock, and that's when they made the Yonahlossee Road. And that is the exact road that Muir himself traveled back in 1898. Final 2 points. The proposed John Muir Parkway would use Muir's title as the father of our national parks and his well-known status as a famous outdoorsman in the national hiking and outdoor communities to encourage interest in traveling this stretch of roadway and visiting local communities along the way, like here in Blowing Rock. The proposed John Muir Parkway would also use Muir's revered status as an icon in the U.S. Department of the Interior and the National Park Service to further garner their interest for this area. Just to highlight that and to conclude with this, one thing that can happen as a result of this, right now, again, I said there's 62 scenic byways designated by the state at this time. There are only 4 in our entire state that are designated as federal scenic byways. The first step to becoming a federal scenic byway is to first be a state scenic byway. And I happen to believe that if we get this designated as a state scenic byway, that we can get this designated as the 5th federal scenic byway because of the fact the National Park Service and the Department of the Interior already have such a vested interest in the legacy of John Muir as the father of our national park system. So I would like to see that ultimately happen, and that's kind of my end goal with this. But tonight is, again, a first step to that. So I'll end with this. The mountains are calling, and I must go. I'll say it one more time. Let's do one more thing to make that statement even more synonymous with Blowing Rock tonight. Thank you so much, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them as best as I can.
Okay, anybody have any questions?
What do we do
Sure.
tonight?
Sure. So what I need y'all to do, and you should see it up here, this is the resolution, and I know, Doug, you can read it or I can read it, whichever way, but the resolution basically states that you guys would support North Carolina Department of Transportation and the North Carolina Board of Transportation designating this as a state scenic byway. So you guys have the opportunity to vote on that tonight. What will then happen? I've already got a resolution of support from the City of Lenoir, from Caldwell County Board of Commissioners, and the Town of Elk Park. With you guys on board as well, I'm going to submit all of those local resolutions to the state with a complete packet in regards to this and the history behind it and the scenery behind it, because we know the scenery is there. Once that happens, what will happen and play out is ultimately the state will meet, the NCDOT Board of Transportation will meet in March. So this will play out until March of next year, and then they will vote on it themselves. But one of the key things they're going to be looking at is whether you guys support it here at the local level. So that's why this is so key tonight.
Okay, I can read the resolution if everybody would like it, but it's rather lengthy, or
We may have all read it.
if all of you have read it already. Okay.
One more question. This does not affect Highway 221, which is already designated.
Yes, so I've talked to Kyle Cooper, he is over the North Carolina Scenic Byways Program, about that. So you are correct. 221 currently between Linville and Blowing Rock is currently designated as the Little Parkway. That's the only name that it has attached to it. What would essentially happen is the state would then have a choice. They could go ahead and designate the entirety of the route as the John Muir Parkway and leave it at that, or they could go ahead and make the designation as both. The smaller section being the Little Parkway, which is what I would assume they'd be most apt to do, and then the larger segment being referred to as the John Muir Parkway. But it would not affect it in the sense, it would remain the same. It's still going to be a scenic byway. It's going to be treated the same way that it is today.
Yeah, I think, Clay, that they have had a couple of times where they put names with yeah, like the little parkway, they joined two together.
Sure, and let me go to give you one good example real quick. So, and I forgot to mention this in my presentation. A good example of what this would be similar to is out east, there's actually a scenic byway called the Lafayette's Tour. And that's actually referring to the tour that General Marquis de Lafayette made in his 1825 trip to the USA. And basically, General Marquis de Lafayette, as some of us may remember, he was a close confidant of President George Washington. So in much the same way this John Muir Parkway would do that same thing. It's going to follow Muir's travel just as that one follows Lafayette's travel. And again, I think the key point here is John Muir is such a revered figure by the National Park Service. This is the way to possibly get this designated to the federal level. This presents that opportunity. Under the current standing, I don't think it's going to present that opportunity, in my opinion.
Public ask a question?
Go right ahead.
Just wondering, in view of this area's proximity to the Blue Ridge Parkway.
Sure.
Was any consideration given to naming it the John Muir Scenic Byway?
And that will be a decision that the state will have to make. Ultimately, they are in charge of the naming of it. The reason that so far that the resolutions that have been adopted have chosen Parkway is quite frankly because of all the parklands that do actually adjoin it. Parkway tends to stand out a little bit more in the public mindset and the National Park Service's mindset. So that's the reason that so far we've chosen to use that term. But ultimately, the state will make that decision. That is for them to make. They will decide what it is actually named and called.
Okay. Council? Pete?
I think we've all read it, and so I'll propose a motion to approve the John Muir Scenic Byway.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay.
Pete's probably more familiar with John Muir than us. Those John Muir Woods and your
Right.
neck of the woods.
Redwoods, right.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. Any more discussion?
I just want to say thank you for all your personal work on this. I know you've invested countless hours, and I think it's a very worthwhile endeavor. So I appreciate that.
I appreciate you saying that.
It perks one's interest when you read all of it.
What's that?
It perks one's interest when you read all of it.
Yes, it does. It does.
Okay, we've had a motion and a second. Albert? David?
Yes.
Alyssa?
Aye.
Pete?
Yes.
Okay, motion passed. Next up, we have, I skipped over the regular agenda to be passed, so I need a motion to get the regular agenda passed.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving along. We have Chief Aaron Miller here to talk about Maple Street and one-way.
Council.
Thank you, Chief.
A few months ago, if you recall, we discussed possibly making Maple Street one-way. We really didn't come to any final resolution to that, so we've been asked to speak about that again and see if the council wants to move forward with making that a one-way street or leave things as they are. I did have the opportunity to have another conversation with the owners of the Ragged Garden, with Lisa and Rob. And they told me, and I've watched some cars, normal cars turn into their entrance, but basically they have about 20 deliveries per week that come onto the property that can fit into their driveway. But the only way that those 20 deliveries a week can come onto the property is by turning up Maple Street from Sunset Drive. As you know, the driveway is at a slight angle, so it's impossible for trucks to come down Maple Street and make the left turn in, so the only way is to come from Sunset. So from the police department standpoint, it would probably be important if we did make that a one-way to make an exception for those delivery vehicles and trash pickup collection vehicles. that is the only way that they can get onto the property and to the dumpsters there on Maple Street. So I guess I'm asking council if they want to move forward with making that a one-way with exceptions, or one-way with no exceptions, or leave the street as is. Yes?
Aaron, for the most part, don't those big trucks hang out on Sunset? And I never see them on Maple there for the most part.
The larger trucks do. The food trucks, a lot of those are tractor trailers, so they have to sit out on Sunset Drive. Some of the smaller delivery trucks, one specific example was the seafood truck that delivers 2 or 3 times a week. The linen service, and some of those trucks are smaller, and they are able to come onto the property if they come up Maple Street.
Aaron, has any of the parking that was brought up for like Maple Street and along coming down from like First Citizens, was any changes discussed for that, or is this strictly just changing?
From the conversation that I had with them and from watching some vehicles, I watched just even a regular pickup truck try to go in there one day. Even if we eliminate parking spaces on Sunset Drive, those larger box trucks will not fit through the rock columns. I watched a dual-wheel pickup truck come through the rock columns one day, and it was just all it would do to fit. So even if we eliminate parking spaces, they still would not be able to come on the property.
They're made for T-Mobile Fords.
They were.
I'd like to see us, and I've brought this up before, and I know we've talked about it in the parking committee. I would like to see something over there at the school get designated as a loading zone, because that truck's gotta go. He pulls right up there to the entrance of Maple Street, and coming out of Maple Street now will be just one way, so everybody's gonna be coming out of there. You can't see by him looking down.
Well, everybody already has, well, no, that's not true.
He's still
As far
parked.
as the traffic that's coming out of Maple Street, I don't think it would change. The street would still be one way from the beginning, the top entrance of the parking lot, except all the way to the bottom. So I'm not sure that it would be an increase in traffic coming out. Some traffic would still be able to go back toward Main Street out of the Maple Street parking lot.
But it still is a danger trying to see past that tractor and trailer when he stops right even with Maple Street to unload there. If we could get him on the other side of the road into a parking space or loading zone, would make it
And
a
I
whole
don't, I
lot
don't
safer.
disagree. I don't disagree, and I think that perhaps as we move forward with our parking conversations, we can talk about loading zone areas and that kind of thing, and how we want to designate that.
Chief, do you have a recommendation?
I don't. I look back historically at the number of traffic accidents we've had at that intersection, and there's been 2 in 20 years. So I don't particularly have a recommendation either way.
Well, where that Ford Explorer is parked, is that that's almost at the intersection?
It is.
And the occupants of I guess it's a townhouse to the left, they're going to have to go around and come in the other way.
Yes.
You talked to them about that?
No, I have not. Oh, what, no, well, Linda Walker owns the first townhouse there. In full disclosure, she has her own parking space on Sunset, so I'm not sure if she turns in there. The back townhouses and the Rhodes Apartments will also have to come around.
Well, if she's got something to say, I don't want to hear her say it now.
Where are the other units parked? I know where, Linda, you have a place. Where are the other?
They have their own designated parking spots around the, Rhodes Apartments has some dedicated parking spots, and the alleyway between Rhodes Apartments and those townhomes,
Yeah.
there's some dedicated parking spots out there.
And I think there's one dedicated parking space for Henry's place.
Yeah, that's right.
Is there a particular time of day these box trucks come and go?
Most of them are in the morning hours, but I I wouldn't say that all of them are, but I
Right.
think most of their food deliveries are in the morning.
I'll ask Linda a question. Linda,
Sir,
are you brave enough to tell us your thoughts? Because instead of the Sunny Rock?
well, my thought is, I think it would be safer one way, and I don't care if it's coming out or going in.
Okay.
Because tourists, I've watched tourists go down, they don't turn through the parking lot, they just go straight. So from that standpoint, I don't really care, but I'd like to see it one way, either way.
Thank you.
And if it was one way from Sunset, wouldn't the bestseller, wouldn't they still be able to pull in that way, pull in the parking lot, leave the parking lot, leave off, go up to Main Street, leave that way? Would that not be their problem?
That's true. One of the reasons for trying to, for having the traffic come in from Main Street is access to the post office that way, and also to keep from dumping all the traffic back out on the already congested Main Street. Those were just our considerations.
sense.
From the parking lot.
And one thing I did fail to mention is we have already removed the parking wayfinding sign that's at Sunset and Maple. So we're trying to discourage through the wayfinding for visitors to find the parking lot the other way.
That sign,
Yes, it's been removed.
So you're gonna make it one way from Main Street, or you're gonna make it one way
One
from
way.
the, where you turn out from the post
Right.
office?
From where it starts one way now, which is at the entrance of the post
Post
office.
office at
It'll be
Jamison's
one
house?
way the remainder of the way.
Right.
so there'll be
Okay.
a do not enter somewhere.
Right, do not enter sign here, with maybe a little caption underneath, if the council so chooses, that says, delivery vehicles only, or delivery trucks only, maybe, if that's the route you want to go, or if you don't want to go that route, then, do not enter. Totally up to you.
I have not seen any, I'm not standing up there for the last 20 years, but it seems like most of what the truck traffic that is coming to the post office is coming from Main Street, not this road.
Yeah, the post office trucks are not really a consideration. It's really just the delivery trucks going into the Ragged Garden Inn. And the trash pickup vehicles that have to go in behind the townhomes. I don't know if they'll put a restaurant back in there again or what'll happen, but there's trash collection vehicles, and probably, if it's a restaurant, they probably have a grease collection vehicle that has to go in.
Well, if we don't like it, we can always change it.
Okay, do I hear a motion either way?
I'll make a motion to reorder this one way from Main Street. I don't know how we want to handle the delivery trucks, if that's just something that's understood with your department, chief, or if we need signage to that effect, but I think that's more administrative thing.
Yeah.
Sure. One way all the way from Main Street, or
No, I
from
was
where?
gonna, yeah, I was gonna say
Or from where
clarification on that.
the second entrance of the post office is.
Yeah, from the second,
Okay. Understood.
Janice Burns house.
yes, right above Janice's house.
And you are right, I do see a lot of vehicles that turn in and
Which needs some
continue to
help.
go the wrong way, all the way up. That's true. Okay?
I'll second David's motion.
Okay, you may want, while we're in discussion now, you may think about adding in the trucks, because you'll probably get a lot of calls, people saying, hey, I got traffic coming the wrong way, so you may want to put that when you, some type of little explanation there.
And we can talk to them at the Ragged Garden and try to make those, see if they can make those deliveries happen earlier the better, when there's not
Right.
much traffic in and out there, so.
Maybe our signage says exceptions for
Yeah,
truck deliveries to Ragged Garden. I mean, that, be that explicit.
Okay, sure.
okay. Alan? David?
Aye.
Melissa?
Aye.
Pete?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
We'll
you,
have
Chief.
us a one-way. Okay, next up, Chatola Public Art and Parks and Rec Director, Miss Jennifer Brown.
Good evening. Chatola Resort and Spa hosted a sculpture walk in 2019. During this event, a sculpture was approved by Town Council to install on Main Street near Chatola for a year until the next sculpture walk event. Due to COVID, Chatola canceled their 2020 Sculpture Walk Art Walk. Chatola is now requesting to change the current sculpture with a new sculpture. BRAC reviewed and approved the proposed new sculpture. And I believe you have the public art application and the picture of the new proposed art. Any questions?
Okay, questions for Jennifer?
Is this going to be another temporary piece? Is this a
I
permanent?
believe
piece?
it's for another year is the goal, is a year
Okay.
from the
As long as
artist.
COVID don't hit it.
Unless we have no more COVID.
The
No
first
more
artist got
tryouts.
bonus.
All right.
Help clarify this for me, because I was always under the understanding that this was town property, but that's not the case. It's a town-maintained property.
Sidewalk
The
is.
sidewalk is, but this would be their responsibility, not us.
So I recall when the other sculpture was going to be removed, they were going to repair the sidewalk there from the bolt holes. So is that going to be taken care of? Is it going, we're just going to put more bolt holes in it? How is that going to?
From my understanding, it's just gonna go in the same location where it is now, so I guess if
So
there's,
it will fill on the same base that the current one is on?
that is a good question. What I can do is I mean, if it's up to you guys, but I can always reach out to them and tell them that if there's holes that are existing that don't fit with this current base, that they are gonna be responsible for repairing it.
Right.
We're talking about this because it's public art, vice town property.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It's not town property.
Well, he said beside,
It's, yeah.
yes.
Vice means not.
I didn't hear what you said.
Anybody
I
else?
apologize.
Pete, anything? Okay. How's council feel on this? Do I hear a motion then?
So this will be in place for how long?
A year.
A year. Then we'll revisit this again?
Yes, sir.
So I do have one question. The original setup to this, if I recall, was that they were placing a sculpture every year along with the sculpture walk event that was being held, which I know got postponed due to COVID. But I've not heard plans for a sculpture walk this year. So are there no future sculpture walks planned, and they're just going to ask to have a sculpture replaced every year?
That's a good question. That was not in their application.
I thought that when I talked with them, that they hoped to get that started back, the sculpture walk, because they're working with the Rosen Center and another one over there with this art, is that not true?
I'm not sure who they're working with. I do know that the current sculpture that is there is alone. It's not owned by them.
Right.
So I think the artist is like, I need my sculpture back kind of thing. So it's probably why this has come up now without a sculpture walk, I would assume.
But personally, I have no issue with art being up there. I just know that that was the premise that this started on,
Yes,
that it was in
ma'am.
relationship to an event.
Well, I've said my taste in art before, I don't have one, so.
You don't like art? You don't like art? Melissa,
Huh?
you don't like the art?
Well, I'll be honest with you, I actually bought a piece from this artist, the first sculpture walk, so if that answers your question.
We'll get you up on it.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion. Mr. Young?
Move we approve it.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll make a second, but I would like to add to the fact that if there does need to be repair
Repairs made.
from the different base sizes, that they are responsible for that.
Okay, modified. Modify the motion for that.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Yant,
Aye.
David,
Yes.
Melissa,
Aye.
Pete?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Sculpture will be there. Okay, next, we have Planning Director Kevin Rothrock with a request from Larry Pickett to connect the water without annexation.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Larry Pickett, he's here tonight, and he is requesting a water connection on an existing private line at his property located off Rocky Knob Road in Caldwell County. This private line is connected to a public line that serves the Blowing Rock attraction, and then through a private line that serves the Peaky Top home, which is owned by the Wilson family, and then follows down the mountain to Rocky Knob, where two other properties are currently connected. Mr. Pickett is preparing to build a house on his property on Rocky Knob and would like access to the town water since the line currently runs through his property. Homes on each side of Mr. Pickett's property are currently connected to town water and pay double rates. Neither of these properties nor the Peaky Top home are within the town's corporate limits, but they all pay double rates. Mr. Pickett is willing to pay the double standard water rate if afforded the ability to make a connection to his system. A little history, it's been the town's policy for at least the last 25 years for properties to be required to annex into the town in order to receive utility services. There are still properties that are on the town system that are not in the corporate limits, and those pay double rates. Mr. Pickett's property is a fair distance from town, and the only access is through Rocky Knob Road. And this makes providing town garbage collection and other services a bit more difficult if he were to annex. But Mr. Pickett is willing to annex into the town if required in this unique situation. Some other factors that's going on. The Dale Wilson family, who owns the Peaky Top home, has had discussions with town staff on the possibility of upgrading the existing private water line from the rock to their property to a public line. And if the town participates in the cost of the upgrade, annexation for that property and others might be a consideration. If annexation is required for those water line improvements, Mr. Pickett is willing to also annex his property at that time. So to summarize, it has been the town's policy that properties that want water connection or sewer or any type of utilities annex into the town. This is a little unique, being that it's so far away and an existing private line is there on his property with town water in it. So he's asking, there's a letter that was Mr. Pickett provided in your packet, and he's asking at this time if he could just make a connection and pay the double rates. Mr. Pickett's here to answer questions if you'd like, and I'll try to answer any if I can. Council? Can we hear from Mr. Pickett?
Sure.
So as mentioned, I understand the policy. I think my neighbors were grandfathered in because their connection was made to this private line many years ago, outside of the 25 years. And so I understand the policy has changed, and I'm willing to, be annexed into the town if necessary. But, regardless, one way or the other, perfectly willing to both pay the double rates for the water fees as well as any repairs to the line. And both of my neighbors have a water easement agreement that specifies that, makes it very clear, and I would have the same agreement along the way as well. So just asking for, I guess the first ask would just be for an exception. I'd be able to access the line and pay the double rates. But if you feel it's necessary to be annexed, then I'm willing to do that as well. Regardless, I'm hoping to get started, in the next month or so with construction, so I kind of need to get the issue resolved. So So we just appreciate your consideration of the request.
What is the, so you mentioned Peaky Top potentially being annexed and improvements to that line. Can you elaborate any more about?
Not much. There's just been initial discussions from the Wilson family and the town with Matt and other town staff, I guess, maybe Shane's discussed it, about the town participating in upgrading that line from the rock down to that property to public line standard with the hydrant. Currently, that property and the two beside Mr. Pickett, the meters are read, or the meter for that is read up at the rock. That's where the last meter connection is. And then Mr. Wilson disseminates the bill amongst the properties. And so he's trying to, as I understand, get out of the water business. And
So there's 1 meter for,
1 meter for 3 homes, as I understand it, and they figure up who owes what. What he would want to do is have that line, if I understand correctly, that line extended to a public condition, 8-inch, I would say, or at minimum 6-inch ductile iron with hydrant, and then meters placed down there so they can be read by the town crews. And then Mac might chip in. I don't know if I've misstated, but that process is separate from Mr. Pickett.
yeah, I'm just trying to understand the landscape.
But if one consideration is if the town decides in the future to participate in that project, the annexation at that time would be probably appropriate, given the cost of that and figuring out.
So that annexation process, if we did that, would be actually for 4 homes.
It could be for more. It could
It
be for more.
in the future, but
other
currently
properties,
it would be
yes.
for 4.
Minimum, yes.
No, it's not the issue.
No,
Who installs him, who makes a tap and gives him a meter? You?
Yeah, my builder would have to do that.
Okay.
And, you know, there are meters that both of my neighbors read, and so based on their usage of the water. But as he stated, Mr. Wilson is one that sends the bill out and people pay their pro rata share.
So you have to buy the meter?
Yeah, I would have to get the line, you know, it goes right across the property, but just connect it and put in a meter there so that I can read for my usage as well.
Is this your meter, our meter?
It's a private, it's a private meter.
It'd be private if it's done that way. So we've had an estimate done on upgrading that line the entire way out to a 6-inch adding hydrants. I think that came in just shy of $200,000. There'll probably be another piece of that upgrading it all the way to Pinnacle Drive that adds more to that. But the number's been out there. I don't know where it's gone from there, but it has been looked at upgrading the whole thing.
That's just a little more of the backstory of what else is going on, but his request is separate from that.
Understand that.
I don't have any problem.
Council?
I have no problem with it, his request.
Okay, is that a motion?
Yeah, yeah.
Do I have a second?
I have a second for discussion.
Okay.
So, I understand the issue you're asking for, so I'm trying to approach it a different way. So, the Wilson property is directly adjacent to town property, town limits.
Yes.
Your property is adjacent to Wilson property, or is there a gap between there?
No, there's a gap. It's
The other 2 houses?
Yeah. The other 2 houses, there's one on either side of me that, you know, gets the water today, and then there's mine. And then from the upper one that connects, the way the line goes is to the Wilson property.
Okay, so if Wilson is annexed, is there assurance that the other 3 properties are annexed?
Well, I think their that would be up to, council to ask for the, whether you just want one or.
The only reason I'm bringing all of this up is that you had brought it up, that you, Mr. Pickett would be willing to do that.
Right.
To be annexed, so I'm just thinking down the line.
Yeah.
Informally, I've discussed it with, and I'm not speaking for my two neighbors.
I understand.
But I think they would be open to it, yeah, based on my discussions with them, even
Thank you.
recently, over the last couple of weeks.
Thank you for the clarification.
Pete?
Kevin, how many potential lots are there in the area that could possibly, down the road, be looking at this kind of request?
Shane, if you're on, can you zoom in where the properties will show the tax map?
Caldwell, right?
I'm sorry?
We'll have to go into Caldwell.
No, you can zoom into this. It will show them. There we go. Well, I did this earlier, so.
Hang on just a second.
You could, well, we've got this up. This is perfect right now. So Mr. Pickett's is in the, this is Mr. Pickett's right here. There's a lot above him and one below him. These two are connected. The line runs up the mountain up there, and I'll pull that down.
Oh, okay.
And so there's Peaky Top, right there. So that strange shaped piece is same, it's owned by the Wilson family as well. This one is, that is not, and then that's the one that the house is on. So those three, and then the very next one is Mr. Pickett's neighbor, Creviston. So there's some potential there.
So how many did you come up with?
4 plus the other 3, if they're all in play, so 7. Could be, let's check this one here. Could be this one too, 8. I mean, that's the slope going down to 321 if you're looking at that one.
Is that the
6, 7, or 8, something in that like
Is
that.
that the impetus to talk about a bigger pipe construction down the road for other housing?
No, I think that would serve all that. 8-inch line? 6-inch line would serve all that, would. I mean, there's not a, understand that the public line would only run to there. From there, it would remain private. The upgrade discussion was only down to here.
Okay, thank you.
Any more? Okay, we've had a motion and a second. Albert? Aye. David?
Yes.
Melissa?
Aye.
Pete?
Yes.
Okay, motion passed.
Thank
You
you.
have some water.
Good luck with your project.
Thank you.
Okay, that finishes the regular agenda for tonight. One thing that I'd like to say is stepping in tonight was it's hard shoes to fill, but I just want to thank all the town staff. This has been one heck of a month that we'll all remember, and I think everybody has stepped up and done a wonderful job. So I'd like to thank them, and hope we don't have to go through that anytime again soon. Albert?
I can't think of anything I need to yak about.
David?
I would just echo your comments. Thank you very much.
Melissa?
The same thing, just proud of our town staff. They did an amazing job during a horrible situation. Very proud of them.
Pete?
I did talk to Shane a couple of weeks ago and asked that he talk with the Department of Transportation to look at the timing at the light at Sunset and Main, because there's not enough time and the traffic backs up, especially if you're trying to make a turn. So he's requested that somebody from the department come up on a weekend and take a good look at that. So, thank you.
Alan?
A man of many words.
Mr. Mayor, you're on here. Anything you'd like to say?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Are you there? Can you hear me, Doug?
Yes.
Okay. First off, I want to say thank you, council. Doug, you've done a great job. And I thought since I was sitting next to Albert Knox, and under the current health conditions, I'm great now, but I didn't want to sit next to Albert Knox and get him sick. So, but I would like to say, I've had some comments about post office parking, and I want the citizens to know that the town does not have any control over post office parking. That is handled by the post office, the U.S. Postal Service. So, I do know they put out signage stating that unless you're on postal business, you will only park there for a certain amount of minutes. But just wanted to reiterate that it's not kind of Rolling Rock property, so we have no control over that. Secondly, it's been brought to my attention, there's a few streets in town that may need to be in repair, either potholes or maybe paving, and I know Mr. Fox is looking into that. And thirdly, once again, I would like to reiterate what Doug has said, and David and the rest of the council about the water issues and things that transpired over the last month. I commend all of our town employees and our citizens for all their diligence, their work. I mean, it's great. And Mr. Fox, I think plans to go over that in September with all the details. So I missed you guys. Hope all's going well, and thank you so much, Doug. You did a great job.
Okay, now before we hear from the manager, I think Mr. Yount had something.
Yeah, I reserved my right to speak, and glad I did. Thoughts crossed my mind, Mayor, that maybe excluding the manager, we might just leave this format in place forever.
Okay, Mr. Fox.
Was that a motion?
Mr. Fox, if you would.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Perfect. I'll start by saying, I do not believe that the mayor, is responsible for me being, out tonight with COVID. So squish those rumors before they get started. So I don't think I contracted COVID from the mayor, but, who knows in today's world, I suppose. But I am unfortunately not there tonight because of testing positive yesterday. So I'll be, out of the office for the next few days working. I got a few updates. Calendar update, State of the Town is next Thursday, the 18th, at 5 p.m. That's at the American Legion. So next Thursday, the 18th at 5 p.m. at the American Legion. That'll be myself and Mayor Sellers, along with Charles Harden and Tracy Brown as well, speaking and giving updates on all things town related. I will confirm what Mr. Gerini mentioned earlier about the timing of the light at Sunset and Main. The DOT engineers at Division 11 with the Traffic Services Unit will plan on being here soon to take some timing observations and report back to us on what those results show. I hope on a weekend would be nice, if not at least a Friday. Our ice house, which is located on Maple Street, so a little brick house or rock house, I should say, down just at the cross from the entrance to the post office, is town-owned, and we do bid out the annual lease for that building, and that will be coming up starting later this week. We'll advertise bids for a few weeks and bring something to council in September. That is something that we customarily do, like I said, annually. So that's the time for that has come back up. So we'll be soliciting bids for anyone interested in potentially renting or leasing the ice house, again, located on Maple Street. And, finally, I will present a more comprehensive update on the water main break that took place on the 18th of July in September. I was planning on doing that tonight, but felt like it was better to wait to be in person. But my hat's off to the entire staff, the town council, everyone pitched in, truly everyone pitched in, from all 70 plus full-time employees to the town council. All were out actively searching, looking, and helping in so many different ways. And I'll give a much more comprehensive update in September of the timeline and how the events transpired that day. But be glad to try to answer any questions you have if I can.
Questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Fox. Before we take a motion to adjourn, I will remind everybody we do have a special meeting next Tuesday, the 16th, closed session meeting. So I'd like to remind everybody on that.
At 6 o'clock?
6 o'clock. Okay, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion adjourned. Thank y'all for coming out tonight.
Very good, Doug. Listen.